Hello, everyone. My name is Erasmus, and welcome to the Shaft Sports. On today's episode, I want to talk about the game between Manchester United and Grimsby Town. I think the football world was shocked when the game ended 2-2 between Grimsby Town and Manchester United, of which it went into penalties. And of course, Grimsby Town won. Now, this caused a massive upset in the entire city of Manchester, but a lot of joy in Grimsby Town. And in the aftermath of this, the owner of Grimsby Town was interviewed and he made a very, very bold claim. And listen to what he said. He said, this league, this product, and he's referring to the EPL, is the result of 190 years of investment and hard work by clubs up and down the country. The fact that some clubs found their chair when the music stopped and others didn't doesn't mean those left standing should be excluded forever. And I know we are all lost in the euphoria which is coming as a result of this, especially if you're a hater and you were hate watching. This is big news. And then for every football fan out there, these are some of the stories that we always want to get out of football. But I think this angle is also very, very important, especially when we are beginning to see performances like this down the side. It makes you question how much talent is within English football and how much of it is neglected as a result of the over-concentration of capital in the upper echelons of football. And that is why today we are going to be looking or asking the question, should football money, especially within the English Premier League, be redistributed massively down the league? I want to really hear your comments even before we go in, but I'll be presenting to you 5 arguments today for why we should support the redistribution of this money down the league. Let me hear from you. I want to see your comments. All right, so we know this isn't about football. This is the future of English football, and it cuts into the heart of some of the biggest questions in today's game. So, what's happening right now? And I want to give some context before I go into what the arguments in themselves do look like. I think we all know this, that the Premier League is the richest league in the world. Billions in TV revenue, wages, and transfer fees that dwarf the entire budgets of smaller clubs. But that money is concentrated at the very top. And the bad news is that that gap is only widening. Lower league clubs are living hand to mouth, and some are folding, some can't pay wages, some communities are losing clubs that have been around for more than a century. But here's the paradox, the Premier League needs those clubs, and without them, there is no pyramid, there is no promotion, there is no relegation, and there is no chance. So the question here is, do we leave football to pure market forces, or do we recognize football as a shared story, one that needs protecting? I think it is important to get right into the arguments, but I really, really need to hear from you what you think about this. I want to start by, first of all, looking at some of the numbers over here. The Premier League is pulling in around £5.6 billion from TV deals right now, with the next cycle heading to about £6.7 billion. So for every £1,000 generated, 880 goes to the Premier League clubs. The Championship gets about £70 through parachute payments, and League One clubs, just £6. League Two, £4.15. And if you drop down further into the National League, North or South, you're talking about 15 pence for every £1,000 that is generated within the Premier League. That is the scale of disparity that we're dealing with. And we've built a system where one part of the pyramid dines at a Michelin restaurant, whilst the other parts are asked to survive on crumbs. So is the Grimsby owner right in calling for the redistribution of wealth within the Premier League or within all of the national leagues in England? And I have a couple of reasons why I think this is a very, very good idea. For context, this redistribution could look like more money actually going out to some of the clubs in the lower leagues. It could look like big clubs in themselves having to give up some of the payments that they receive for trophies and for the other competitions and sponsorships which inherently they do gain. And by the end of my argument, you'd see why this is a perfect and fantastic idea that can actually be integrated or that can actually be implemented. I first of all want to make the moral argument, and I think this is the very first one that the Grimsby owner pointed out. The moral argument is based on fairness and shared legacy. And the claim is very simple over here that the Premier League in itself is a shared cultural product. For it to get to where it has got to right now, there was contributions by over 150 plus clubs from all over the years. And therefore, it is unfair that the majority of the shares is going to clubs who just exist to just 20 of those clubs at the very moment. 20 clubs keep nearly all of the riches while the hundreds scrape by. And I think this claim over here is very, very strong because it speaks to ownership in the sense that the English Premier League, as it exists right now, is one which has received contributions by other clubs who are part of the ecosystem, who at one point in time, it is their stories, it is these owners picking up the clubs, it is these clubs bringing in players from different regions to put together matches, which has created the memories, which has created the appetite for the English Premier League to be accepted as it is right now. So it is therefore unfair that at this point they are being cut out for the revenue because it is like playing a game of musical chairs, right? And immediately the music stops, there are some people who are not going to get a seat. And then you say that it is only those who are seated who get to enjoy everything. I think without that very person, who has been left out, you don't have a game. And I think I want to relate this back to football because the idea of promotion and relegation in itself implies shared responsibility. You can't have winners without losers. You can't abandon the losers either. For some reason, God somehow has to care about hell if he wants to keep heaven intact, given that it is the polar opposite. Without it, where are they going to go to? All right. I want to present the second argument, and I think this is a much more practical argument. Right now, Premier League cash often inflates the wages and the transfer fees of these players. And the claim in here, the kicker for this argument is that much of that money is leaving England to foreign clubs who are producing talent for most of these top clubs. And to add additional context, it is important to understand that a lot of these Premier League clubs are not shopping down the league. Hardly would you see players within the Championship and within the National League making their way into the English Premier League anyway. Most of them are shopping from foreign markets. The argument here is that redistribution would be able to deliver bigger marginal gains. And it is very simple. I want to illustrate. More money at the top means that the marginal returns which you are getting on that money is diminishing over time. So, where does the rest of the money go when you are done spending, when you have so much of it and you can't help but spend? Obviously, the arguments of supply and demand will then say that because now clubs have more money, the prices are going up and therefore they are spending more money and losing more money to the market. And unfortunately, that market happens to be these foreign clubs who are now being fed with a lot of rich British pounds. I think that when this money is redistributed across the league, we are able to cap this supply and we are able to limit the ability of these clubs to continue to overspend and thereby inflate cause the level of inflation, because this also creates an effect where the gap continues to expand and the gap continues to widen. And I think it's really, really key that we look at this. So the money is going to be spent anyway. Rather, if we are able to cap it and give it to some of these clubs, we think they are able to do much, much bigger things with it. Which means that instead of paying extra money on increased wages and increased transfer fees, what you most likely get is investment by these small clubs into their communities. Because I think that's another important context to remember. The clubs within England are built from communities. They are able to also serve as economic hubs for most of the community. You go into a lot of communities in England, and the club is basically what enriches it. When there are more people coming in to watch games, more people from outside, when they're playing Champions League and more foreigners are coming in, using the local transports, purchasing the services, all of that enhances the livelihood of the people living there. They are also able to invest in training facilities. They're also able to invest in the academies and into local football. What that even then means is that we would eventually be building up the academies and the talent pipeline within these clubs to be far more robust and capable of generating talent, which is able to move into the English Premier League. So that money would rather be spent within the country and within the league, which would help to ensure that there is increasing quality. Because we've all seen the problems that has come with buying players from outside. Sometimes it cannot be the right fit. And you see clubs already having a preference for players who have the quality and are being developed here. But in order to ensure that that is sustainable, we need to ensure that that quality is spread across board. Okay. Before I go on, I want to hear your thoughts on some of these things. But without further ado, I want to move into the third argument that I'm making for why this redistribution in itself should exist. And this is the community argument. This is because of the identity and belonging which clubs do provide. Because these clubs in themselves are not just businesses, they are social anchors. If you look at the game between Grimsby Town and then Manchester United, at the end, there was a large population of people on the field jubilating. This is the sign, this is what shows you what football means because it is not about the money, it is bringing a sense of pride. Not only so, the Google searches for Grimsby has increased significantly, and this gives a massive appeal to clubs. Cities like Liverpool, Manchester have gained massively from the image of their football clubs. By their clubs doing well, the images of those cities have increased. And we've seen cities like Leeds, Middlesbrough, who have suffered significant effects whenever their clubs took a step back. The general perception, the general mindset of the people who exist in there, the feeling that there is possibility, the feeling that they can never be stopped, the feeling that they can go ahead and go and win, the feeling that it brings the community together, the fact that they go out there, watch games together, decreases all of the social vices and some of the hatred which we've seen also develop within the games. Because more misery means that there's far more frustration which these people let out within the communities. It is their identity, it is their belonging, it is something that we inherently need to protect. The government and everyone else makes significant efforts to try and protect the identity of individuals. These clubs are epitomes of that identity, and I think that there is a case for being able to protect it. Therefore, redistribution protects football as a civic institution and not just even as entertainment. The next argument I want to make is the narrative argument because the kind of stories that comes out of this is what enriches the league. It is not just about the football that is played. In a way, football also does envision life, the upsets, the giant killings, the rags to riches stories. These are the things which make football magical. And without lower league clubs being strong enough to compete, these stories are going to vanish. So you have a David and Goliath story, but without David in there, that story does not exist. And we keep killing our Davids with the very high level of disproportionality that exists between the Premier League and all the other clubs. So I really, really want to know what you think at this point. Um, but I would like to present the final argument because my final argument is on system integrity. You know, I spoke about promotion and relegation, but it is only meaningful if it is survivable. If relegation equates to death, then it is not meaningful. And we've seen a lot of clubs quite recently get relegated and keep falling down and down because of the significant financial impact that comes on these clubs. And I know there are a lot of reforms which are being put in place to be able to save them. So, for example, there are parachute payments which are meant to soften the relegation. but instead it is entrenching inequality. I think this is even a conversation which I can expand on a different day. But we create yo-yo clubs that drop down, take the money, and then bounce back. And therefore, we keep this same set of people, we keep supplying this same set of people, and breaking into the main core in itself becomes very, very difficult. That means fewer fresh challenges and fewer fairy tale promotions. And the independent football regulator, which was pitched by the Grimsby Town owner, can be a very good fix. But without financial redistribution at its core, it risks just being another level of bureaucracy. So let us go back to what the Grimsby owner said. He says there needs to be more redistribution. He wasn't begging for charity. There is a case made on ownership, made on morality, practicality, community narrative, and then also system integrity. Because without it, we lose not just the clubs, but the culture, the competition, and the very stories that make English football matter. Nights like Grimsby's FA Cup run against Manchester United doesn't just happen by magic. They happen because somewhere along the line, the system allowed for this specific narrative to exist. It allowed for David to be able to pick up a stone and then sling it at Goliath. The question now is, how many more nights do we get before the pyramid cracks? Thank you all very much. Like and subscribe to this podcast. I want to hear your thoughts on this very thing, whether you agree that there should be far more redistribution within football. Thank you all so much, and see you in the next episode. Bye.